So what are the 6 profiles that we've highlighted? First, the rookie, the living legend. Lead me to my spreadsheets. You've got the kiss up, kick down type of profile, the kiss down, cover up, and then finally the production pro. So let's talk about each one of these in more detail. And for each one of these, we're going to go through, all right, what is this profile? Where does this person tend to be strong, and where are some of their blind spots? So the rookie. So there are typically a couple of kinds of rookies. The one type is someone that may have worked in that crew forever and then just got promoted into a supervisory role for the first time. And so they know the work really well, but still like maybe they're now in charge of people that were their best buddies for a decade or more. The other type of rookie is someone that was just brand new to supervision and often brand new to the company or even work itself. So we've seen that situation even in like the oil and gas and chemical industry, where folks come out of college, they're maybe a new chemical engineer, and they get hired in as a supervisor and they're in charge of managing folks where, their crew probably has 10, 15, even more years of experience, in that work and doing that job. And now they're supposed to be the supervisor. And so those are some of the different kinds of rookies that you may run into. So where are they strong? Well, for the ones that have been there, just got promoted into the supervisory position, their biggest strength for them is that they know the job really well. And they can tell if somebody on the crew is BSing them. They can tell, okay, this is what is real and what isn't. And often, if they were hired well, they may have instant credibility with the crew, particularly if they were known as a competent and a safe worker. For the other kind, the kind right out of school, their biggest advantage is that they're fresh eyes. They notice risks. They also may notice the normalization of deviation that others may have just kind of glossed over. It became a habit for them, and they don't even notice it anymore. And they also tend to be perhaps a little bit more adept at the latest technology, particularly as it relates to either the work or data collection. So that's really where those 2 different types of rookies are strong. Now, where do they have blind spots? Well, for both types, sometimes there's a reluctance to hold the crew accountable. So for the one that's been there a while, sometimes these are their buddies, and it's something that they have. It can be tough for them to hold folks accountable, and we've even seen it hold them accountable for, say, wearing their PPE, particularly if they know that hey, I didn't always wear my PPE when I was in that same role. And so people call you out on your, you've now changed your tune. So that can be a challenge. And for the newer person, learning how to hold people accountable well is a hard skill to learn for any leader. It's particularly challenging when it's your first time in the leadership role and everyone else knows a lot more about the job than you do. Okay. Other kinds like that sometimes you run into other kinds of blind spots with that experienced sort of new supervisor, is that sometimes they overfunction and they tend to be a micromanager. Their joy is not managing people. Their joy is in doing the work that they got promoted from. And so they prefer to kind of keep doing that work and leave the people stuff to let go. And then for that other kind, the one right out of school, they may feel they need to be the expert and then have to assert themselves in a way. They have to make the decision. I'm the leader now. I have to make the decision. And sometimes they're just on unsure footing as being the boss, and feel like they have to have all the answers. So those are the things that work well, but also are some of the blind spots with this first profile, the rookie. I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca for the next one.
I'm going to talk about the living legend, sometimes a living legend in their own mind. So this is a leader who, when they fill out a self-assessment, will often score themselves very high and may not see the same alignment with the people they're trying to influence. They have very high confidence, and you can see this in an experienced leader. You can also see it in a new developing leader. They can sometimes come across as a little arrogant, though when you get to know them better, you sometimes discover that underneath that arrogance is not all the confidence that you would expect to see given what shows up. They are very confident, and they are able to exhibit that very nicely across the organization. So it really builds their reputation as someone who knows what they're talking about. Sometimes what we'll find is that they really play to a single strength, which can be helpful, but is also not going to bring out the best in themselves or actually in the people that they're trying to influence. I was thinking about the impact of a living legend on speaking up. So how does that play out in the work group? So sometimes living legends, because they have such strong confidence in themselves, are not always open to people sharing their ideas or being challenged. And that can have implications on their relationships with people. Mike did a great workshop earlier this year, talked about leader-member exchange or relationships, as well as procedural justice, and that's fairness in decision-making. Living legends can have impacts on both of those that aren't ideal. I was looking at this last night, and I think one of the challenges that living legends have sometimes is they will dismiss other people's ideas because they really do believe that their perspective is really good. And that will sometimes discount others, which has impacts, of course, on people's engagement, on their willing to challenge, on the willing to speak up. We love our living legends, but we've got to balance it. So I'm just curious, as we're going through this already, are you all on the call thinking about people that maybe fit into these sort of profiles? Have you met a living legend in your organization? Mike, I'm going to hand it back to you.
And you'll have an opportunity in a poll we're going to do in just a couple minutes to kind of indicate where you see those profiles show up in yours. So thanks, Rebecca. So number 3 is lead me to my spreadsheets. What do you think we mean by this one? Well, these are the kinds of leaders in which their presence in the work environment, their presence out checking on the work or engaging with the workers is somewhat limited. They have meetings. They prefer to do the analytical work. And that's where their comfort zone is with the spreadsheets, and with preparing presentations and doing those sorts of things. So they often do really well in the management side of the job, but struggle with more of the leadership or handling people challenges, or even just handling problems that are coming up. And so sometimes they come from a lot of different places. Sometimes they're a stellar individual contributor that gets promoted. Sometimes they're more comfortable in that kind of individual contributor role, but wanted to move into management and see how it goes. So the things that they tend to be really strong on, highly analytical and often detail-oriented, and are really good at that piece, and can really break down, help uncover what are some of the problems that are occurring from the root cause standpoint. And they also tend to make decisions based on facts, which, supports, that sound root cause analysis and risk assessment. But the blind spots, as you might guess, are, you tend to not see them. And even when you do, you can tell they're not in their comfort zone. You can tell that, working with their interpersonal skills, or working with others, or, reading tone and nonverbals from others is is maybe something that's not as strong in their skill set. And sometimes they'll end up underestimating the importance of relationships and connections in terms of influencing others. So not just this has an impact with their teams, but they often are not as influential as they could be with their peers or even moving upward because they miss the people side of influencing and rely more on these are the facts, this is the analysis, and we should just follow the rational, reasonable person decision making without all of the other kind of soft stuff that needs to happen to kind of sell that decision. So that's really the profile of the lead me to my spreadsheets. How about we jump to the next? Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
No, I was going to say, Mike, I love when we talk about soft skills, because I think those soft skills are the hardest things for us to learn.
Yeah, but they're very learnable. We all can.
I want to talk a little bit about the kiss up, kick down leader, and just take a moment to see if you have someone in your history that might fall into this category. So this is a leader who is very good at managing up. If they take a 360, the leader and their boss are usually very well aligned, but often there is a big gap in perception between the leader and the direct reports they're trying to influence. Their profile is interesting. So they're very skillful. They have very effective communication skills. They're able to frame things very well. They're really able to manage the impressions, perceptions that are being created. And when I talk about this, I do not mean to be disparaging at all. These are very helpful skills. All of these leaders are complex. It's not just one thing. All the leaders that we've worked with have had a combination of things that are really terrific in terms of influencing, driving safety, building commitment, and they have some opportunities where they can further skill up. The kiss up, kick down leader is one of those examples. So very good at the working above me, managing that. Not so good at managing down, and often will take a more punitive approach with their teams. They think about managing performance versus leading people. And sometimes they're a little resistant to feedback about that. It has some this does actually have some serious implications on creating a climate of speaking up. Because what happens in an environment like this is the team will see that it's perfectly safe for their leader to speak up to their boss because they say good things. They learn that it's not so safe to speak up to their manager. So it impacts upward communications. And there's all sort of repercussions from that. Because if you see a colleague speak up and get in trouble, the likelihood that you're going to speak up, it goes down. I think the other thing that worries me when I run into a leader that has this particular challenge is they tend not to get good information, because their team learns really quickly that their boss is really only interested in the good things that are happening because they want to be able to reflect that positive performance. And so that limits sometimes what the boss gets. And then sometimes they're surprised because things have not been going well and they don't learn about it until it's quite far down the path.
Yeah, one other thing I'd say about that, Rebecca, is that they tend to they can get good results. So accountability is not a problem with them compared to, say, the rookie, when we were talking about sometimes accountability is a weak spot for them. But in this group, the way they hold the people accountable like Rebecca mentioned, is punitive. So people tend to look for the exit door. They look for a way out and to get off that team as soon as they can.
It also makes me wonder, Mike, about the impact on psychological safety. And we know psychological safety, right? That precedes the sort of culture for high performance. It also impacts the climate for speaking up.
Yeah, it's not safe, not a safe environment.
No.
So what's the opposite of a kiss up, kick down type of leader? Well, it's the kiss down, cover up. So what does this look like? Well, this is one of those where you don't want to, if you look at it from a 360 survey perspective, the self scores and the direct report scores tend to be consistently and significantly higher than their bosses, the managers, score. And so there's a disconnect between how the team views this leader and how the boss views that leader. And so that's one of the challenges, is figuring out, like, okay, what's going on in this situation? And usually, some of the strengths of this type of leader, they've created a really strong bond with their team, and the team really values that person's leadership. They often, and this is part of the cover piece, they provide what we call air cover for the team, shielding the team from organizational turbulence, change, and sometimes some chaos. And they can become really good safety culture champions, willing to, push back on shortcuts to protect the team and the team members. So the team is going to follow that leader wherever they go, and so if that leader champions safety, the team is going to go with them. So they've created that tight bond. But some of the blind spots are that, okay, so they've shielded that team, but sometimes there's a cost involved there. And the cost comes in a couple of ways. So sometimes it looks like, to that leader's peers, that it looks like resistance to change or a lack of collaboration from that team. It's hard to get anything from that team. You got to go through that leader, and they tend to protect the time, protect the work, the priorities of that of their team members. And so it's hard to kind of move forward. And sometimes it looks like, they don't collaborate across the organization. In addition, if there is some organizational change that's happening, that team that's to get on board with, if that team leader doesn't agree, then that team is going to be an island of isolation outside of that. And then the other piece too is that sometimes the reason this shows up like this, or the reason the 360 results show up like this, is because that team leader just hasn't spent any time or effort really trying to do impression management. Impression management sounds bad, sounds like you're putting on a happy face, but really trying to make sure that their boss is very clear on what priorities, keeping that boss informed, making sure that boss is not going to be blindsided, and really trying to protect that boss as well by making sure they have all the information they need, they understand the priorities and the decisions. So they tend to not do those activities as much. And so as a result, that boss can be blindsided often by, hey, I didn't know your team was working on this. I didn't know your team was working on that. And that boss didn't know it either. And so that's where that kind of becomes a real problem for the kiss down, cover up leader. So they do a lot of nice things. And if they're focused on the right things from a safety perspective, that team can often be an island of engagement, island of positive safety performance, perhaps in a bigger sea of challenges, but there's a risk involved there, and there can be challenges with that.
I was thinking about newer people to the workforce in an environment like this, Mike, and this is a very nice environment for a new career person to be experiencing. There's the little risk, or the downside of it is they may remain very naive about some of the realities of organizational life, and it doesn't
Yeah,
really help prepare them for their own development as they move forward.
absolutely. Okay, so one more left to go. Rebecca?
I'm going to talk about the production pro. So think for a moment in your organization, leaders that come to mind who might fit this particular profile. So this is a leader who is very skilled in the operating system, very focused on targets, production, flow, very concerned about customers and making sure the customer requirements are met and that they get their product or service on time in great shape. Sometimes might give the suggestion that safety gets in the way a little bit. You might even hear them say something like, the safest plant is a plant that's shut down, which immediately is a problem because it sort of suggests to people that you can't have production and safety. When you talk to a production pro, they know safety is critical and they know it's part of the overall system. But their focus, what they talk about, what they put on attention to, how they measure, it's really all about production. Companies love this person because this is how they make their product. This is how they deliver on their targets, how they meet their quarterly goals. So this production pro gets a lot of positive reinforcement. The downside, of course, to that is it suggests that safety might be getting in the way of production. I think the other downside I see is that it suggests that if you're going to raise concerns or issues, if you have a safety challenge, there's hesitancy. Anything that is going to interrupt the production flow is not going to be terribly welcomed. And of course, you all know what the challenge of that is in an organization. I
think another piece with the production pro, Rebecca, is that their view of safety is pretty much, hey, it's on you. We give you the tools, we give you the PPE, we give you the procedures. You just gotta follow them. And so they don't always take responsibility for maybe the production pressure, urgency issues, and what that can do in terms of helping, in terms of adding amplifiers to the work people do.
Yeah, I think it also ties into how people feel valued. So
Yeah,
people feel valued if they are producing. And that's critical in a business, but there's lots of other important aspects to running a successful organization. So people's willingness to share ideas, to come up with improvements, to raise concerns or barriers, those are all met in the context of, well, what's the impact of production? And that will either encourage or discourage people from speaking up and giving feedback.
Yep.
I think one of the things I worry about is under a leader like this, error and mistakes will often get hidden because they impact production. And that's challenging because at some point, if these errors and mistakes aren't getting surfaced and worked on, something more serious happens. And then the production leader is really surprised because he or she's not been receiving feedback about issues that have been going on along the way. I'm stuck on the speaking up issue right now. And I think for the production pro, what they have to watch out for is speaking up might be discouraged because it's seen as something that might slow down production or impact production, and that it won't be welcomed. I think those are all the key pieces that were running through my mind.
Okay.
Pam, would you like to set us up to do a little poll? What we want you to do is take a moment, pause, and think about what's the most common type of leader profile that you see in your organization. And Pam, people can only pick one, right?
They should only be able to pick one, and just please note your name will not be recorded, so we'll not be reporting back to your boss if you've if you're saying they're a living legend. But we should get the totals as you participate. And if for some reason you are familiar or have someone in your organization that is in a leader profile that we've not indicated in the survey, go ahead and check the last box, which is other, and you can put that alternate profile in the chat. It could be an interesting conversation. Right. Starting to get some results. We've got a tie between, kick down, kiss up is slightly ahead of production pro. And then we've got living legend, leave me to my spreadsheets, and kiss down, cover up, all tied. So kick down, kiss up is in the first position right now.
That's kind of disappointing,
disturbing.
I thought that was something that was more of a 30 years ago kind of thing. You definitely saw that way back in my youth when I was in the Marines. I definitely saw some leaders that were like that. Now I had some wonderful leaders in the Marine that were absolute nowhere close to that, but man, I thought we were getting better. But maybe not. Maybe there are pockets.
I just closed the poll. That's the final results.
What was the second place, Pam?
Production Pro is number 2.
Yeah, I think that's, it's interesting. I think if you get into some economic uncertainty, and sometimes that's sort of the reaction from the organization. Oh my gosh, or if there's a worry about layoffs and there's a worry about then we sort of start to gravitate toward this belief that it's safety or production, not, hey, only safe production is acceptable here.
Yeah. And then everything else had two votes other than the rookie.
The kick down, kiss up leader. I wonder too if that, when you're under stress as a leader, you will sometimes revert back to the basics and really self-protection. And I wonder, in the environment that many of us are working in today, where there's just a lot of uncertainty, if that additional pressure on leaders has kind of pushed people back to the kiss down, kiss up piece.
Yeah. I think there hasn't been as much training of leaders as maybe in the past. Maybe that's so. I don't have any stats on that. I wonder if some of that is the result. Okay, ready to move on, Rebecca?
Yes.
So we're going to start talking about what can you do about this yourself, and then how can you help others. And but first, how do you know where you are on this? Well, one of the most powerful tools we use is a 360. And it comes in a couple of different forms. One is a 360 survey, and another is a 360 interviews, where you have folks that interview all the folks around you. And so that's your boss, your direct reports, and your peers. So you're getting a full, as well as yourself, and you're getting a full picture. And what that does is, so if you think about, this is a Johari window. And so on the y-axis, you've got, your knowledge of you. So what you know about yourself and what you don't know about yourself. Believe it or not, there are things you don't know about yourself. And you don't know what those are. But there's also what other people know about you. So there are the things that people know about you and the things they don't know about you. And so you go by this 2x2, and so you've got that lower right quadrant. Those are the things that what you and others all know about you. So that's not news to you. You know about this. And then you've got your secrets, the things that you know about yourself that others may not. maybe there's certain elements that you're unconfident, not confident in, but you look confident. And so people think you look confident, but behind that, your facade, you feel like, oh man, that's a secret. I'm not really as confident as people think I am. And then the unknown unknowns, and nobody knows what those are. So we're not going to talk about those too much. But one of the biggest values of a 360 is to uncover blind spots, the things that others know about you, but you're blind to them. You don't see that as much. You think you're maybe coming across one way, or your intent is to come across one way, but the impression others have is different. And so the value of a 360 is bringing all of that information to the forefront for you. And then it's up to you. Do I take action, and how do I take action? So both 360 surveys or 360 interviews, just two ways to get to that point about understanding your blind spots. But let's talk about these 6 profiles. And what we're going to do is talk about them from 2 aspects. Okay, I realize I'm a rookie, or I'm about to be promoted into a supervisory role, and I'm going to be the rookie. People are going to be looking at me. How do I get better in this area, or in any one of these profiles? And then if you are a manager or a senior leader, and as you've gone through this, you're like, I've got a supervisor who is a living legend, or a lead me to my spreadsheets kind of person. What can I do to help this person? So I'm going to take the first 3, and Rebecca is going to bring it home. So the rookie, if you identify as a rookie, what can you do to improve? Well, first is get, honest and objective feedback from a stakeholder or a coach. And this is where that 360 survey feedback can be really helpful. Learn how to ask questions. And particularly if you're one of those you've been promoted into that area, but you worked in that crew. So that's something that is helpful for that person to get better. The other piece, when I was a young lieutenant in the Marines, again, I was, I had been in the Marines for a few months, and now I have a platoon in front of me, and these Marines are 30 of them, and they were all folks that had been in the Marines, some of them a year, some of them had 10 years of experience and had a lot of stripes on their shoulder. And so how do I lead that group without, and also still hold them accountable? And one of the best pieces of advice we got was, work with your senior enlisted folks, particularly the ones that are credible and are competent, and use them as sounding boards. Make sure that you listen to them and get their counsel, but you still own the final decision making. And so you got to keep those boundaries, but then also make sure that you're open and listening to them. And so if you're a manager and you're trying to help a rookie, basically, try to help them get some feedback and coaching. Give it to them yourself, while recognizing their strengths, and then look for ways to kind of give them like small wins to help boost their confidence and make sure they feel better and better about what they're doing, but also get them some feedback and coaching as well. Oops, I'm sorry. So living legend. Okay. Can be a challenging one. And Rebecca and I both in where we have a 360 survey report. We're about to talk to a person, and their data is, it's pretty stark that their self ratings are above everything else. And so sometimes I just sort of let the data sit there and let them look at it and read it. And then we talk about, we ask questions. So what do you think? What do you think they're seeing? What do you think they're hearing? And so much of it is a mismatch between intentions that leader has and the actual actions that they take. So kind of working with them, it can be hard feedback for them to see and to hear. I also sometimes, if it's a kind of person where they like to learn, they want to get better, and they're a reader, I'll recommend some books, things like Humble Inquiry or Servant Leadership. Those are some phenomenal books, simple, easy books around how they can still be a strong leader, but in one that is perhaps leaning a little bit more into listening and asking questions of others. And then I think, if you've got a leader that's like that, they have to get this feedback, whether that comes from you or comes from others. But you want to make sure that you're recognizing the things that they're strong. Usually these folks have like really strong strengths, and that's what they lean into. So recognize that, keep that foundation there, but also work with them yourself or get them some help that coaches them into doing those other things around asking questions, listening to the folks around them, to their team. Okay. Now lead me to my spreadsheets. Okay. This person, it's interesting. In my opinion, I kind of find this one of the easier profiles to help. Maybe because I identify with them so much. I'm a spreadsheet guy myself, and there's a part of me that's somewhat introverted. And so the biggest thing for them is help them with a couple of really fundamental interpersonal skills around asking questions, listening, engaging, and then work with them on their kind of habits to help weave visibility and going out into the work area into their habit mix. Because I think sometimes there's folks, they roll into the office, they get a cup of coffee, they turn on the thing, and then they get pulled into email, they get pulled into calls, they get pulled into everything else, and they never get out. But it's also not something that they want to do. So sometimes it's work with folks who are like, okay, before you even turn the computer on, go out, go visit, go talk to people, ask questions. And sometimes it works better for them in onesies and twosies rather than, big groups. That's not maybe where their skill set is or comfort level. But helping them with those habits, help them with a couple of skills, and then get them started, and they start to realize like, hey, I can do okay with this, and it feels, you do it enough and it feels more comfortable. They're never going to be traveling salesmen or anything like that where they're truly extroverted. But they can learn enough behaviors and learn enough habits that it can get them over the hump here. And I think if you have a leader under you that's like this, again, take them with you as you walk through the area. Model the way, set objectives for them around engagement, and then go with them so that they can see how you interact, and then you can also see and coach them as they do it. So those are just a few things, a couple of ideas for each one of those, the first three. Rebecca?
The theme that is running through the first three and will run through the next three is really the issue of getting good feedback.
Yeah.
And helping people to have more insight into how they're affecting others. I know with the kiss up, kick down, if you recognize even a little bit of this in yourself, just know that it's not a secret. The people that you're leading recognize this really easily. And so you have an opportunity to ask questions. If you have someone in your group that you have a strong relationship with, you can say, I've been thinking about this and I'm wondering, is that how I'm viewed? But helping that leader kind of come to grips with at least a component of their profile fits this kiss up, kick down. And then if you do recognize this in yourself, really think about the interactions that you're having with your team, how you address problems, how do you respond when something goes sideways? And there are three little questions that I just love. I learned them a long time ago, and I think for the kiss up, kick down leader that they are perfect. And they are for the kiss up, kick down leader to reflect before the beginning of their day. The first question is, how do I want people to think about me after I've interacted with them? Yeah. The second question is, how do I want people to think about themselves after they've interacted with me? And the third one is, what do I want people to tell others about me after they've interacted with me? And I think in this situation, those three questions would be really helpful. For the kiss down, cover up leader, let me go back to the kiss up, kick down. If you have a supervisor, you have a leader in your group that is challenged with this particular aspect of the profile, I think you should talk with them about it. I think you should talk to their skip levels or your skip levels, and gather not just generic feedback, but try and get some very specific feedback that would be helpful to the leader in helping align them with the impact that they're having on their crew. It's really important that this kick down component gets managed, because it is going to create all sorts of problems in organizational functioning, how you are viewed as their boss, your reputation for allowing this sort of behavior to continue, and it really impacts their team in terms of willingness to share new ideas and innovation, raising questions, raising problems, and it will at some point become a detriment to the leader with this. It will prevent them from having opportunities that could very well make a big difference in their career. So there's a personal payoff for strengthening this issue. There's an organizational payoff for improving it. And there's absolutely an impact on safety, because it impacts the ability to get people to speak up and raise concerns. The kiss down, cover up leader is quite different from the previous one. If you see this in yourself, here are some things that you might consider doing. So one is to seek feedback. The biggest challenge with the kiss down, cover up is the relationship between the leader and his or her boss, and how they're viewed in the organization, because it is their boss that is going to largely reflect upwards in the organization what is happening with this particular leader and his group. So if they're sort of working undercover or in secret, so to speak, the great things that they're doing are not going to get known or reflected. And if there are challenges going on, leaders could get blindsided if those challenges get bigger and aren't addressed. So get feedback and really open the conversation with the boss, the leader's, your boss, the leader's boss, on how you would like the relationship to be and what some of your concerns are. If you're able to have this discussion, it's really what prevents you from sharing everything upwards? What makes you feel like you have to provide cover? As I say that out loud, I know that is tricky. That is not an easy thing to do. But what you're really trying to resolve is, how can you share feedback freely with your boss? If you have a leader under you who is challenged with this, I think you have to have some just good conversation about the pros and cons to covering up or protecting their crew. I think one of the biggest concerns I have when I see this is the issue of accountability. So when you have a leader who tends to cover up and just be very positive with their crew, there's so many benefits to having strong relationships with your team, but you do have to watch out. Are you having the challenging conversations? Are you raising issues when you see them? Are you ignoring things? And so one of the things that you can do here is gather more feedback. I think the more specific examples that you can give a leader that you are responsible for in the impact of how they behave, the more helpful it is. Mike, am I missing anything on that one?
I don't think so.
The last one is the production pro. So we won't ask you to raise your hand, but is there anyone on our call today that might fit this bill? They're really good, very focused on productivity. If this is you, I really do want to ask you to do some research and study. There is excellent research out there that shows when you get safety right, it has such positive repercussions on the overall business picture. So if that's something you don't have a lot of knowledge around, or you don't have the data around it, get that data. It really is, it is the issue. If you get safety right, you will get other things right. And it largely has to do, to get safety right, you have to address relationship issues. You have to be clear around expectations. You want to make sure that people are set up for success and that they understand the exposures and risks and that they're prepared to protect themselves. So that if you're this profile or a piece of this profile, I'm giving you a little homework. Do that research because it's very impactful and it will have big impact on your group. I think if you have someone that's under you, that reports to you, that tends to be a production pro, recognize it and talk with them about it. Typically, leaders get what they're asking for. So if you have a production pro under you, they're trying to deliver what they think you want. And so have conversations around, yes, you want the production, and you want these other things also. So open that conversation up and give specific examples. Gather feedback for them on what happens when they send the message that it's really only about production. How does that impact teamwork? How does it impact raising concerns and issues? How is it modeling for their young leaders, new leaders coming up through the organization, what success looks like? What keeps striking me, Mike, is the key here is to help leaders get really good feedback. Self-reflection for themselves to ponder how they're doing, but feedback from the people that they're actually trying to influence, their boss,
Absolutely,
stakeholders, their direct reports, and find ways to get that feedback that makes it easy for people to help you get better. As I think about the profile, sometimes I worry about, well, it sounds like all the leaders we've worked with are just terrible. And it's just not true at all. The leaders that we've worked with, they're great. They are committed, they're trying, they work hard, but it's hard. And I think sometimes, regardless of which profile you might fall into, is being in a leader role can be a little isolating. You can find that it's harder for you to get feedback and get other people's ideas and impressions on how you're doing. And so you have to really figure out a way for you to get that information and get it in a way that makes it easy and comfortable for the people that you're asking for help from.
I know we're running close on time here, but we do have one question that was submitted in advance of the webinar, and I'll shorten it a little bit. It basically is asking, if you've tried to talk to one of these leaders and address the issues, giving them practical tools to make improvements, what do you do when they don't get on board? What's the power of the message to the rest of the company regarding decisions that are made about these leaders?
That's a challenge, and unfortunately, the the last resort for getting that kind of change is their boss, is their manager. That person has to recognize that the impact, and has to be more hands-on in moving that person forward. And that could be being very open and honest, working directly with them. So I think you have to make sure that that person's boss is aware of the issue and the impact it's having, and go from there.
Bosses, like everybody else, tend to do the things that they think their boss wants. They're trying to do the things that their boss is looking for. And so this leader's boss has an opportunity to help set them up for success, help them be successful in this scenario. And particularly if you're going through a safety transformation where leader roles are so critical.
Thank you. Well, I don't see any other questions. Just a reminder to everyone who participated today, you will receive a link to the full recording of the webinar later this week. You can also reach out to Rebecca or Mike at any time with additional questions or thoughts about how to work on the leadership within your organization.
Have a great day, everybody.
Take care. Thanks,
Thank
Pam.
you. Mm-hmm.